Shalom to the Akim out there. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakah Kodash, double honors to the apostles, bishops, elders of great millstones. Salute to all the sincere Akim out there of the hopeful elect. All right. Yeah, what's going on in the news lately, or what's been happening, these past few days, America's been trying to get NATO support with this war going on out there in Iran, because Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. It is affecting the global economy, with the high prices of gas in America and different parts of the world, And so that's a heavy leverage that Iran has over the U.S. in this war. The simple fact that they have the capability to shut down that oil route through the Strait of Hormuz. All right, and you might hear Donald Trump in front of the cameras brag about how this war is basically won. There's only a few weeks left, and that Iran's army has been decimated and all their missile launch pads. They only have they blown up the majority of them. All right, and they took the Navy out, the Iranian Navy out, which is basically all lies, because if they took out the Iranian Navy, the Strait of Hormuz shouldn't be closed. All right, if you took out the majority of their missile launch pads, then why is Iran still choking the global economy by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz? And why are you asking for NATO support to help navigate oil tankers through that strait to protect them from the Iranian military? Okay, so we know the lies of these politicians, the so-called white man, the devil. All right, the global elites of this society. That witchcraft is they still, these politicians, they get in front of the cameras to try to charm the people, win the people over, give them a false state of hope. All right, just like these pork chop pastors in the church, through deception and lies. Okay, and a lot of the people, majority of the people will probably eat it up, but there's a lot of people that's confused about it. Then also you have a lot of people who ain't buying it. All right, so according to prophecy, this war was bound to take place and happen. All right, and it's not going to simmer down. It's going to continue to increase all the way to the demise of the United States of America, which is prophesied as Babylon the Great, which ought to be destroyed, according to the book of Revelations, the 18th chapter. All right, and different books throughout the Bible that the prophets saw and wrote. They saw the destruction, the utter destruction of the United States of America. All right, coded as Babylon, Babylon the Great, the virgin daughter of Babylon. All right, among many other nations of ancient kingdoms, which America adopts their philosophies, like Egypt and Assyria and such. Okay, when you read in the Holy Bible, because this is like a mystery. When you read about a kingdom that's going to be totally destroyed and utterly wasted, all right, to the point where the land is deserted and uninhabitable, that's talking about America. Okay, that's talking about America. All right, because ancient Babylon is still inhabitable. That's modern day Iraq, and you got them Arabs out there. All right, you even have U.S. bases out there. Okay, but according to the prophecy, America's going to be destroyed, man. So like I said, Donald Trump sitting there lying in front of the press, in front of the media, the cameras, talking about how the war is pretty much won, but at the same time, he's begging for NATO support. And guess what? NATO is not supporting the United States on this battlefront. All right, and the scriptures talk about that, man. Okay, matter of fact, go right into it. This is Revelation chapter 17, verse 15. It says, "And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues." All right, so the waters represent the people, and the whore that's sitteth upon the waters is talking about America, all right? The whore represents America because what? People, multitude, nations that speak different languages, they flock here to America uh, in in order to work, in order to try to become successful. All right, open up businesses here in America. All right, and they might send money back to the country of their origin. Okay, but they basically come to this country in search of opportunity. All right, so that's why it says, and he said unto me, the waters, which represents the people, which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, the whore represents America, are peoples in multitudes and nations and tongues. All right, so you have all types of races of people that come here in America, and they speak all different kinds of language. Right, you have the big immigration policy going on in America. All right, especially during the administration of Joe Biden, where the borders were pretty much open. And that stayed a hot topic in the mainstream media. During the time of Joe Biden transitioning to the Trump administration, in which he came down heavy with ICE and the Department of Homeland Security to try to round up illegal immigrants and deport them. Okay, mainly Israelites though. All right, mainly Israelites of the Northern Kingdom, which is you Latin tribes. You Mexicans, a lot of you El Salvadorians, a lot of you Venezuelans. All right, we've seen that in the news. Trump rounding you up, putting you in concentration camps and deporting you out the country. Okay, but you got Chinese people here, Arabs, Africans, East Indians. All right, people from all over the world flock to America. So that's how we know that the whore represents America. All right, it reads on to say, "In the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast," those 10 horns represents 10 nations that make up the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, all right, which is NATO. It says, "In the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore," all right, because the whore and the 10 horns combined makes up the beast, okay, all right, because America is a part of NATO. When you the EU, which is the European Union, join forces with America and form NATO, that makes up the beast. That whole system is called the beast. All right, and it says the 10 horns which thou sawest, meaning the countries of the EU that make up NATO. It says these shall hate the whore, meaning they're gonna hate America. They're gonna turn against America. All right, even though by contract they have a treaty in which they're supposed to be allies, but at the end of the day, the EU nations, that makes up that part of NATO, they're going to turn against America. They're going to hate America, and they do. In Europe, they can't stand Americans, because Americans are known for their pride, all right? And them Europeans hate that. They have a disdain towards Americans, okay? And Trump, in his prior when he was in office, the first time when he was in office, he was causing a lot of tension with NATO, all right? And now it's even worse. Now it's even worse, NATO do not want to support this war that the U.S. has involved itself in at the lead of Israel, okay, attacking Iran. The European Union, the NATO countries, they don't want to get involved in it, man. All right. It says, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. All right. And me and Apostle Tahar, we had a small conversation yesterday after camp. He asked me, do I know what NATO countries possess intercontinental ballistic missiles? And I named the countries. I was right on it. It's the UK, United Kingdom, which is Great Britain, all right, and it's France. Those are the two countries, the two NATO countries that possessed nuclear missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles. I also thought Germany had missiles, but I was mistaken. I thought they had nuclear missiles, but I was mistaken on that. The apostle corrected me on that. But you know, those are the two main countries, or the two countries that are part of NATO that possess intercontinental ballistic missiles. All right, at least on record or on file. Okay, and the scriptures say, these shall hate the whore and shall make her desolate and naked and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Okay, and France, the French, they're known for hating Americans. Okay, you know they pretty renowned for that. You know, their hatred for Americans. Okay, the UK, Britain, on the other hand, not so much, but they're not so much known for hating Americans, but you can see the you know, if you study geopolitics and you see what's going on, and what's happening with NATO, all right, you can see that Great Britain is not heavily in support of the actions of the United States of America, especially concerning this war with Iran. Okay, you know, Trump asked Great Britain to help protect the oil tankers going through the Strait of Hormuz, and Great Britain declined on it. They said, nah, we're not going to do it. All right. This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, verse 12. It says, your mother shall be sore confounded. All right. Who's the mother of the United States of America? It's Great Britain. All right. Great Britain is the mother of the United States of America. You know, even though you had the Revolutionary War, all right, where America's quote unquote gained its independence from Great Britain. Okay, but nonetheless, Great Britain is basically the country that mothered America, that gave birth to America, pretty much. That's why the national language in the United States of America is English, okay? And Great Britain is known as England. The United Kingdom is known also as England, where they speak English, okay? So it says, your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed, all right? So Great Britain ain't fucking with America, man. You know? Great Britain is not dealing with America, okay? It says, behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. All right, the hindermost of the nations is talking about America, and it's going to be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. All right, because where's America at? The United States of America is all the way on the other side of the earth. All right, it's in the Western Hemisphere across the Atlantic Ocean. It's the hindermost of the nations, and it's going to be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert, as described by the prophet Jeremiah. All right, and with the ongoing tension between the United States and its allies, its NATO allies, it's all prophecy coming into play. No matter which way the U.S. turns, it could turn this way, it could turn that way, to the right, to the left, to the front, to the back. It's always going to be met with problems, war, all right, and in tight situations that it cannot get out of, okay? Ultimately, until it's destroyed, you know? So not only is America's sworn enemies going to destroy it, right? Russia, China, North Korea, all right? And other countries with nuclear capability, but even its own allies are going to come against it to destroy it, all right? So, you know, I'm gonna end this video on that note. Say Shalom wa barakim to the hopeful elect. You know, this is some beautiful times that we living in, man. Prophecy coming to pass. Shalom, Akim, to the next one.